Akira.
Have you any hobbies?
My hobbies are fast cars and fast women.
Hobbies are healthy. They teach you things.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Paw is Law.
Yes.
It's going to be like that all night.
I agree.
Guys, week one is in the books. Ref's Law did not prevail. Well,
it did. No, Ref's Law
not
stands.
in the manner that I was going to say, not in the manner that you wished it to, but
I don't know who this ref guy is anyway, though, because I'm the mailman. USPS, born and raised.
He clearly was very prepared, even in loss, even in defeat.
The spin cycle is crazy.
The grind never ends.
See, we all know about ref's law. Wait till you learn about mailman's law, and we're gonna get this going here, guys. But so, as me, the number one Panthers fan, along with all of you fellow people here, I'm feeling pretty good about this weekend. Jake, how you feeling? Zach, you're feeling pretty good. We were rowdy watching that Panthers game, I'll tell you.
Oh, I'm telling you right now, I'm doing great. Jake is obviously with me on this, and the fact that, look, I got more to talk about. I know some people said it's just that 64-yard field goal. No. I'm going to stand on it. Hell of a win all across the board. This is a game that Michigan last year would have dropped, and I'm going to hold off a few more comments until later. But I'm doing great. And for reactions UFL-wise for week 1, solid first week of football, as always. Was any one of us in this crowd, in this panel, expecting different? Because I wasn't. I was expecting good football. I got good football.
And a fun as hell spring stock, I'll tell you. That was a hell of a time. And this is the
I'll
first time
jump
we've
in.
done a
I mean,
show
I thought
in
the football was pretty solid across the board. You know, we definitely saw training camp having an extra week was certainly a blessing. I thought the one rough patch, which is what is expected, was the offensive line play was kind of rough, especially for a couple of teams, Houston being one of them. I'm sorry, ref. I know you're going to act like you're a Panthers fan, but we all know where you reside. 12-0, all in, rough them up. The Roughnecks lost. You got to deal with it. You're a Houston fan through and through. You got to be you call yourself the number one Roughnecks fan on the planet. So the spin cycle
look at the hat. It's number one Panthers fan. You got it all wrong, bud. I don't know. And who's this ref guy you're talking about? I'm the mailman.
It's early stages of
grieving. I got a letter to
it.
deliver you, my friend, and it says, "I like the Panthers."
Ducky, do you have the receipts by chance?
Do I have what?
Do you have the receipts by chance of a certain image of someone that was on TV just yesterday, by the way?
I can definitely get that
video evidence.
Oh, I think you're talking about my twin brother.
Oh, really?
I heard he was angry yesterday. Oh boy. Yeah. No, Zach, you and my twin brother were seen in the crowd yesterday. And my twin brother, he was wearing not a ref hat, a ducky hat. It's national news, but I don't know. What do you think you and my twin brother were thinking at the time when we were seen out there?
I think what happened is I watched a man lose his primary. See what I'm saying? So here's what's happening right
like
here.
Me.
Here's what's actually happening right here. I'll give you the play-by-play. This was in the mid stages of a man losing one of his personalities, and now we have a man with two personalities who is clearly trying to not realize that he will not be going 12-0 this season whatsoever, and has to default to the 11-1 claim that he usually will.
You don't think the Panthers are going to go 12-0 this year? We already got one under our belt. I mean, what are you talking about here?
See what I'm saying?
I will say, my brother, the ref, he is a very knowledgeable guy. We did talk about ref's law, and it does stand true again this year. Panthers win means a Gamblers or a Roughnecks loss, a Roughnecks/Gamblers win. Panthers loss. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how things turn out. But me, I'm full on with the Panthers right now. I can do no wrong. They can do no wrong.
Anyway, enough other Panthers talking, enough trying to get you to stop denying yourself. I actually want to throw this over, if we're talking reactions here, week 1 here. Luke, we ran into you a little bit there out at Springstock, my guy, and clearly Tampa Champs game was there. We'll dive into these recaps very shortly, game by game, but thoughts on the overall week 1. Again, I love to hear from the panel. Nick, definitely want to hear from you. Ducky, I mean, come on, man. It's good to have you back on the show, buddy. And people have been waiting to see you back. It's been a minute. So I want to hear from you guys. Let's hear from this. Luke, go on ahead and start this.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna repeat what Jay Sternberger said. Just grateful to be allowed to be out on the field with the mighty XFL teams. And, honestly, we all knew that the USFL teams, they really didn't deserve to be out there. Like, they can't hold their own. The talent gap is 50 times greater in the XFL. And that's not an understatement. And so, just The Rock being very just generous and letting the pitiful, poor USFL teams grace the field. with the XFL this week, and especially letting the Stallions grace the field with the XFL champions, the best team in the XFL last year, and letting us just go out there and get the chance to play such incredible competition. I'm really grateful.
Likewise, I'm very appreciative of the greatest XFL fan base for allowing their team to come into Ford Field and just give us Panthers fans that confidence that maybe there's some hope in the future. Certainly not this year, but in the future, maybe we can grace the same stages as them. So I'm right there with you,
Nick. I think you have something to say.
Luke, I really appreciate playing the victim when you have an offense with all 11 starters having come in from the NFL in 2023. For the record, there's no other team that has more than 8 on any side of the ball. Obviously, I get you poking fun at certain XFL fans, but come on, buddy, nobody's doubting the Stallions coming into the year.
But Nick,
you're not an underdog.
But Pat McAfee told me the talent gap is 50 times greater at a minimum.
That's true. That's true. Pat did say that.
And Pat McAfee, he's on ESPN. He knows everything. Surely he couldn't be wrong.
And it wasn't just slip of the tongue. He has said it multiple times.
Yeah, there's I know of at least 3 clips going around of him saying that on the internet today.
Yeah,
he loves that 50 times.
And Matty Fresh just keeps sharing it too.
Yeah, it's kind
I remember that.
I don't know.
I do remember what Maddie said, that there were going to be 3 games that were going to be close this weekend, and Panthers Sword with Wings was not one of them. I do remember that tweet.
All I got to tell you is, what talent gap? Sorry. Just saying. What talent gap? Y'all need to sit the hell down. There was never a talent gap. There was a narrative gap. There was never a talent gap. So please. I hope this is the last time we hear about talent.
I think this is why the merger was so awesome, because now, we had all these conversations last year. Obviously I'm Switzerland, so I stayed in the middle. But everyone else had these conversations on Twitter, on social media, of the XFL is better, the USFL is better, this and that, talent gap this, talent gap that. But hey, across the board, I thought they were relatively similar, and the USFL conference got the best of the XFL conference this weekend. Straight up, Birmingham, Luke, you can play the underdog tale, as Nick pointed out. They do have a very talented roster. You have freaking Matt Corral as your starting quarterback. But across the board, I thought the games were pretty good. I was really impressed with San Antonio, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I think San Antonio, it makes sense that they were able to turn things around, right? They're basically the Roughnecks from last year.
2 words, AJ Smith.
AJ Smith, and it was interesting to see him down on the field too, right? And there was a couple moments during that game when he was rallying his guys like, you guys need to listen to me when I'm talking to you, and this is why that's why he's down on the field. Now, if we start seeing him go back into that box, then we might have the scariest team in the league, because then he's comfortable leaving his players out there without him by their side. I am sad that the Roughnecks of last year got fleeced and moved over west to San Antonio. I am not pleased to say,
And you're not the only one that was in those crowds saying that too.
So let me just say, I know you all are waiting for me to go on. I don't have to say anything. The crowd say everything that you needed to hear yesterday in Houston. Everything from, hey, where's Wade Phillips? Because there's people that told me, people aren't going to care that they changed the coach. Yes, they are. When it's Wade Phillips in Texas, they 100% are. And they were. And there were people saying, what? Where's Brandon Silvers? Who the hell is this quarterback? Now, it wasn't me, and it wasn't my brother, who looked very disappointed, maybe not angry, but disappointed in everything that he saw out there. Now, I would be remiss to mention that the referees out there maybe need to take another lesson, just another go at things, because I don't know if they know what a holding call is. I don't know if there was so many things going on in this game. The crowd was fired up. So many people turned to me, my brother, and said, we need to get you out on the field. And he said, I agree. he thinks he should have been out there. That's what I'm saying, because there was a problem with the refs. Now, when it comes to the coaching, I don't know if it's the coaching. I don't know if it's the players. I know that, okay, they're missing Mark Thompson. That's a big hit. Missing Chris Odom. That's a big hit. Reuben Foster, he was showing up for us big, got injured later in the game. Things aren't looking pretty in Houston. Get your swingers, hope for the best, but I don't know. We'll see next week when my brother's back on the show and see what he has to say. But for now, me personally, the mailman, sorry, the number one Panthers fan, I'm not feeling too hot on Houston right now.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
Well, let's get into the recaps real quick. We do have our special guest coming in short order, so we should probably get going there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll let the mailman have his say again once we get around to that lovely game.
Well, I'm mad for my brother.
No. Hey. Well, you'll get your time. You've had your time, Mr. Mailman.
Well, hey, how about Arlington, Birmingham?
Someone's missing his host chair.
So as far as Arlington, Birmingham, I thought that in a lot of ways the first half played out exactly how I feared it would, like sort of worst case scenario for the Stallions, specifically speaking from that side of things. I think that the offense struggled to get into a rhythm. Obviously, Matt Corral, had some flashes in the first half, some moments where he kind of looked good, but you could tell he was out of sync with his receivers. It was his first time starting a game since 2021. It was just hard to get into a rhythm. The offensive line wasn't, they gave up a sack or two. They didn't seem to be able to run the ball super well. They had a lot of stupid penalties. They turned the ball over. It just wasn't the kind of football that you hope to see from them in the first half. And then, it was a tie game, obviously, at halftime. But really the turning point was the touchdown right before half, where the Stallions were down 11-3 after they gave up a touchdown to the Renegades on a blown coverage. And then, it looked like they might kind of be going into half down by a touchdown. But that bomb that Corral threw to Deion Kane, I think, was obviously the turning point. At that point, Corral really settled in. He started to really play more like himself in the second half and get into more of a rhythm. The Stallions came out fired up. They got the ball to open in the second half and were able to move it really well. And I think also the defense and offensive line both really kind of settled into in the second half. Honestly, the second half, I mean, you could kind of tell, at that point, it was over. Arlington could not really move the ball. The Stallions defense sort of settled in, kind of pinned their ears back, started coming after Perez. The offensive line for the Stallions really started playing super well, was blocking really well for Corral. He had tons of time. They were opening up huge holes for CJ Marable and Ricky Person. And so, once the second half once the Stallions kind of stampede got moving in the second half, it was there wasn't a lot of hope for Arlington at that point. So I think the Stallions, we sort of saw who they can be at their worst in the first half when they were shooting themselves in the foot and turning the ball over and giving Arlington the ball, in their own territory to start some of the drives. And then we saw in the second half that they still can be just as dominant as they were last year and sort of have picked up where they left off and are still probably, the team to beat heading into this new season.
I think for Arlington, one of their big struggles, and I'm a little bit confused by this decision on their part, especially from a coaching staff perspective, where last year their running game was practically non-existent, and they had a couple good games here and there. And I think Davion Smith is a solid running back. I just don't think he should be the first option in the backfield, especially in a league with only 8 teams. We saw him average 3 yards a carry last year, and I think on Saturday he averaged 2.4 yards a carry. Not really a lot of support for Perez. We do have to acknowledge that the king of spring himself, Perez, has now thrown the first touchdown in the 2022 USFL, the 2023 XFL, and now the 2024 UFL. The trilogy is complete. I know he didn't get the win, but I still think that might be one of the coolest spring football stats of all time.
Well, that's what I was about to bring up is Ducky. You put out that tweet. You put out the one tweet and then the update. Although he got the touchdown the first touchdown, all 3 of those leagues, he never got the win in any of those games. So, part of him was like, cool, but oops,
Yep.
Right?
He knew it was happening. He knew it from the start. He's like,
twice against the Stallions, too, which is interesting.
Yep. True there, yes. That is right.
And ironically enough, 2023's loss was against the Renegades. So This is why we love spring football. There's just the weirdest storylines that just don't happen anywhere else.
Yeah. Now, I will say, being at that Arlington game, it was another good crowd, right? Initially, we were up in the press box, and so from the view from the press box, you're looking at the risers and maybe the south end zone. And initially, it wasn't that full looking from up there. But then when I went down to go grab some water, because inside T, they didn't have food or drinks in the press room. I've never seen that. So we went down, grabbed some water. And I went and looked at the crowd. I will say I was very pleasantly surprised with the amount of people out there. And then watching the game, I know we in the first half were or maybe in the first quarter were saying, wow, Arlington might be that team. They may have retooled themselves enough to become that team. But, as I said after the game to you privately, Skip Holtz really is that damn good. He can look at the things that are happening in the first half and make those adjustments going into the second half. We've seen it time and time and time and time again, especially in opening games. We saw it in the first two opening games with the Stallions in the USFL, where things were looking a little shaky, but at the end they get the W, and it looks like the Stallions may still be the team to beat in this new league. I hate to say it, but it seems like it may be true.
Well, I think that's a good segue into the next game, which we will cover, Michigan-St. Louis. We'll just get to that one at the end of our recap segment because Brock's joining us. But the team to beat, in my opinion, on the XFL side is San Antonio right now. We look at what they did to DC. Ducky, what happened to your defenders, man?
Dude, they're putting drones into footballs.
Oh, my God.
Where?
Is that it?
No, honestly, I think it's...
You want...
I might catch flack for this, but I don't think Greg Williams is that great of a defense coordinator.
My tweets from last year would agree with you.
Yeah, I just don't think he's that guy.
I
could name a couple guys that are better than him.
Ooh, spicy.
My only opinion on that is he figured out the San Antonio offense by the second half. Play zone. Because San Antonio is a read-first offense. It is so easy to see what they're doing. It's high motion, quick throws. If you have to make Chase sit in the pocket for any longer than the first read, that's when things get weird. And clearly, that's what happened second half. Remember, they only scored one touchdown second half. Only reason that happened, a pick that went back for 5 yards inside that goal-to-go situation. So I'm one of the few on our power rankings later that is very standoffish on that offense. But I'm just saying, I do want to see some progress that's not just a quick read, because that's very easy for defenses to check into for week 2 and beyond.
Yeah, that and their offense. I'm not too high on Jordan as well.
I would be interested to hear what you all thought. Go ahead. Go ahead, Thorne.
Yeah, I was just going to say the reason why I'm totally willing to wipe this away as a DC fan is because of one player, Gene DeLance, the right tackle.
Man,
I might not have seen a right tackle play as poorly as he did. Very rarely does a tackle wipe a 16-point spread off of a team, especially in a 2-score game, which would have won him the game. But he got on the first Kiki Cutie touchdown. He was downfield. So they called the flag. That got brought back. That's a field goal. So that's a 3-point spread there. Then obviously you know everyone knows about the penalty spitting on Delonte Scott. So that's 15, but then that gives them time to review it. So okay, he actually had a false start on that play, so that's 20 yards on what would have been a touchdown, and the touchdown gets taken off the board. So that's 6 points right there. And then he gets ejected, and his backup knocks out Jordan Teamu the play after, and then Teamu rushes back in, throws a pick that gets put them right on their the goal line for the Brahmas, and they hit that in. They get 7 points from that. So that's 16 points that would have never happened had he just kept his head. The PFF grades just came out. He had a 22.5, which for those of you who are not familiar with PFF grades, it is legitimately impressive to be that poor and be a starter for basically an entire game, because if nothing happens, you get a 60. So to be in that level is actually like legitimately impressive, and we'll see if he is a starter again next week or if they move on from him. But when fluky stuff like that happens for you, it's just time to throw that one in the trash. It was not going to happen for DC that day.
Well, I think too, and you kind of hinted at this, Thorne. I was curious to hear what you guys thought. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from San Antonio because, I mean, I was very impressed with the way they came out and played, and they looked a lot better than what I expected. But at the same time, I don't know, like, I think it's still, time will tell, especially this week will be a good gauge for how good they really are with playing Memphis. Because, I mean, there was a point when they drove down, and they were only down, I think it was 8 at the time, and before that whole sequence with the spitting and all that, if they had scored right there, they had the chance to tie it up. And despite how dominant it felt like San Antonio had been, like that just goes to show you that, like, in the second half, kind of late-ish in the game, DC was right there with the chance to possibly tie, and eventually if they got the ball back, score and take the lead, and then they kind of shot themselves in the foot again with that whole sequence that we just talked about. But San Antonio, for as well as they played, DC, in a sense, was never really out of it. And if a couple things go differently, like Thorne mentioned, maybe if they just had one different player on the field, it's very possible that DC actually pulls that game out. So, again, I don't want to say that to take anything away from San Antonio because I thought they did look very impressive. But I don't know. I think the narrative that's out there right now is like San Antonio is all of a sudden like the sort of like darlings of the league and the team to beat. And, I'll be interested
in the
to see.
conference.
Sure. Right.
Because
I'd be
DC has no identity right now. They lost Abram Smith. They lost their top 2 receivers. And I think I tweeted about this before the game. It was like, who was going to be the guy that stepped up? And outside of Tamu, they didn't have anybody that stepped up. You saw a couple guys make plays. I thought wide receiver Ty Scott had a couple nice moments, but he also had a couple drops. And you had guys like Cameron Harris was kind of non-existent. They didn't really have anyone in the backfield that could even mimic anything close to what Abram Smith does. Now, I do have a lot of faith in Reggie Barlow. He won XFL Coach of the Year last year for a reason. I think he'll be able to get this team back on their feet, but they need somebody, and I don't know who it's going to be because Tamu, and this is what we were talking about last week, right? When Tamu has all the pressure on his shoulders, things don't always go according to plan. And I feel like that's sort of what happened. And, especially at the end of that game, I know Gene DeLance completely screwed up that drive, but he forced a ball in there that got picked off by Darius Phillips, almost took it to the house. That was just an errant throw that shouldn't have been made there.
I'll jump on what I got to point that way. What Luke said with the Brahmas. I view the Brahmas very similarly. Yeah, sorry. As the Stallions. I think they're very similar teams in that they went out and got a lot of NFL talent, and they're teams that I had predicted in the past were going to, like, I really were high on them, but they were going to get off to slow starts. And the fact that both of them won this week is like huge and gives me the confidence that, okay, this is them at their worst. They're only going to get better as they actually start to gel. And the fact that they're picking up wins now tells me like, okay, these two are a clear cut above everyone else because they have so much more upside than any other team in the league, and they're still winning games right now.
I think
I'm going to disagree with you on a little bit of that piece, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we gotta keep moving on.
In a minute.
Yeah.
So then Sunday's first game, or second game rather, with Mailman's Brothers team in the Houston Roughnecks against the Filippo Showboats.
Can I be the first to say? I'm going to let you say it because you're going to say it.
Oh, no, I'm going to say something different.
Oh, go for it.
I think Memphis was more disappointing in that game, to be honest with you. I was very disappointed at Memphis, and for the fact that it looks very much like a John DeFilippo team from the second half of last year in the USFL. Very simple route concepts, couldn't get the run game going, and just kept pounding similar things and thought, well, if we just keep hitting the same stuff, eventually they're going to cave. When in reality, you got to change it up, guys. And the offense did not get changed up. They kept letting Houston stick around the entire time. If it wasn't for the fact that Houston was as incompetent as they were, and as I put it, a clear-cut 8 in this league, they don't pull this out. And that is, and again, we're doing power rankings later, but I put them at 6. I was that disappointed at how a performance was. They should have blew them out of the water sitting there. Unreal. And they're going to have a lot to address because I'm telling you right now, as much as I know I kind of dunked on San Antonio last segment here, The Brahmas are going to be no slouch, and I know A.J. Smith's going to have a bag of tricks at some point. You can't get caught off guard. That was a very sloppy performance against a team that should not have been one-score possession at the end of that game. That's my take. Houston, I've heard enough from you, so I had to put it out. Memphis, they got a lot to address to me that's not talked about enough right now.
I thought the problem for Memphis was that, similar to a lot of other teams in week 1, where is the run game?
That's what I'm saying.
Like we've talked about, defensive lines are going to have an advantage just out of the gate, right? I mean, offensive lines, it takes time to build chemistry, not to mention, not just in the UFL, but also in the NFL. It's just hard to find quality offensive linemen. But across the board, like I thought Darius Victor had a couple of plays where he could have broke for a couple more yards. I know he's banged up towards the end of that game, but I think they rushed for only 34 total yards. I really want to see them mix it up, and kind of like what you pointed out, where they didn't really mix things up. Where was Trey Williams? I don't know why he wasn't in that backfield at all. And funny enough, just talking to their offensive coordinator, Doug Martin, today, he mentioned he'd like to see more Trey Williams next week. So hopefully we see a mix of that where we have more faces in the backfield. Titus Wen showed a little bit of potential. I know he had, a screen pass coming out of the backfield. He made a couple men miss. We'll see. Memphis, Case Cook is just so good. But again, similar to some of these other situations, just like Jordan Ta'amu, when the pressure is all on their shoulders and they're not getting any help, it's tough.
What was also standing out to me, and one of the things I was looking for was, is Case going to take less hits this year? And credit, that's one thing I give Houston. Their front seven is very formidable. But you can't keep seeing that production again. That'll be 3 straight years of Case Cook is getting smacked around in the backfield. That's not sustainable. And I thought that this was the best line that they were going to have for Case in any iteration, Bart Andrus or not, that he has played. And seeing him get sacked over 3 times was not what I was thinking was going to happen. If at minimum, I thought it was going to be less than that. But that's a worrisome thing. That their teams will look at early items like this, and you can make adjustments all season. But Case has been known to get hit after hit after hit. That's not going to bode well. Troy's a good quarterback, and they have a good backup. But do you really want to do this same game that Bart Andrus did the last 2 years? I don't think so.
Well, and I tend to agree, and it kind of goes on both sides. I don't think we saw that much creativity on either side when it comes to the different types of plays that we saw, even just switching it up or going, we saw like we were talking about, maybe at some point go for some of these shorter passes. At least you're getting a couple yards. And, there was a couple of instances where they did, but Garantano didn't. I mean, he didn't look like he was the guy for them.
He holds on to the ball too long,
right?
That's something that's going to break him later this year if they don't get something addressed. And I don't know if that's the solution behind him with Noah Henderson or Reed Sinnett. Sinnett didn't fare much better either when he came in.
I know. Well, and my brother would tell you, Nolan Henderson, that's the guy that we need to throw in there. So maybe we'll see them switch it up here. C.J. Johnson, he's the guy. If anyone's going to make it, get it done, switch things up. Hopefully it's him. But at least for week 1. I mean, there wasn't anything especially exciting, and maybe that was by design on why they were the last game of the weekend. Because
speaking of something exciting,
here we go.
Michigan had quite the ending there, and I think our special guest has arrived. So we want to
let's
throw
do that.
him on the
Sign
stage here. Brock,
yo, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Think you could turn your camera on?
Yeah, let me turn it on. Hold on. I'm not familiar with this StreamYard, whatever it is. Pretty cool though.
New technology.
There we go.
Hey,
there we go. Brock,
how
you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
Excellent. Still riding the wave on Jake's kick, man. Pretty insane.
Yeah, I can imagine. That was going to be my first question for you. Is I can imagine this weekend has just been emotions off the board. Obviously, you got to try to focus in on next week. But what have these last couple of days been like, just with all the hype around the Panthers and that kick, and just the win?
I mean, pretty crazy. Like week 1, I feel like nobody really knows what to expect. It's like each team's got 2 scrimmages under their belt, but even then it's like you're resting players and not everyone's out there, and it's not it's half speed, you're not tackling to the ground. And so it's like our unit talked about how's the team going to look, and so you really don't know. And I thought that was a pretty big statement win against I've seen some posts about St. Louis potentially being the favorites for the championship, maybe to go out and take it to them, and big game winner at the end. It's just feels good starting 1-0. So
absolutely. And I mean, that was such a crazy and unique moment for you guys where in this league, there's no PATs. I mean, for the kickers anyway. So this was your first rep, not just for Jake, but for you and for Jordan, the long snapper. This was your first game rep of the entire season. Comes right at the end of the game, 64 yards out. Could you just take us through that play and break it down for us of what happened? And also with the freezing in there as well. I mean, it must have been pretty hard to stay focused.
It was wild. I mean, you hear the term in the zone, and I think Jordan, Jake, and I were all like, it's almost hard to remember and put yourself back in that moment because you're just kind of blacked out, in a good way. You've gone through it so many times in practice. I mean, we've even obviously, we've hit from that far with Jake in practice already. So it really felt like we were just kind of, at least for me, going out there, going through the motions, wasn't really thinking about anything. It's just you've done it so many times that your body, the muscle memory just kind of kicks in. And, we went out there and let it rip twice. And that was, I've held for a lot of great kickers, and those two balls coming off his foot were, unlike anything I've really ever seen at any level. So it was just, that week one win is something that, I was telling Jake in the locker room, I was like, man, when I'm 80 years old, I'm going to be telling my kids about the kid who kicked 2 64-yarders back to back to win it in week one. And then the first USFL UFL kickoff. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, when I'm 80 years old, I'm going to be telling my kids that I was on the sidelines for that one. I mean,
it was electric, man. It was
that was crazy.
I mean, you saw it, obviously. I've never actually been part of in my whole career, I've never actually been part of a game-winning, as time expiring kick, let alone one from that far. So just insane. And it carried over into the locker room, onto the bus, onto the plane. And then, even now, 2 days later, it's still like, he was on McAfee this morning. I'm sure you guys saw. So, which this show's a close second, by the way. So,
hey, we'll take it. We'll take it. I mean, hey, at least we give the USFL teams their respect, right?
Exactly. I've been seeing some of that too. It's pretty funny.
So for you coming into training camp, it's a brand new team, and at least you brought over Jordan Ober from the Generals. But what has this process been like for you the last couple months here of just trying to adjust into a brand new system, brand new team?
As far as, punter and snapper, it's like, it's not so much a system. We kind of have, one play that we're focusing on, obviously, punt and field goal. So that's nice. And then obviously, that's another thing Jordan and I talked about is, I've never had in college in the pro, I've never had a returning snapper for a second year. I've literally never worked with the same guy twice. So that was a huge with a long camp and a new team and some crazy weather and stuff out here that, having him, it's been pretty streamlined. And it just seemed like camp dragged on forever. And so to finally get to, the first game and just, let it rip was awesome. And, we're already, counting the days till Birmingham coming up this next week. So, but it's been good.
Absolutely. Well, we got a full panel here, so open up to some questions. I think, Thorne, you're up first.
Yeah, thanks, Brock, for doing this.
Sure.
I was curious, whenever there's game winners, there's always the talk of like what's going through a kicker's head when he's doing a game winner. And I was kind of curious what the holder is. Is it similar feelings of, you're just in the process, or what was your mind going through when you were lined up for 64 yards?
It's definitely, for me, it's really all the same. And I think most kickers too, they try to approach every kick the same too, whether it's a PAT or, 60 plus yarder. As a holder, I'm really able to do that, obviously, because it really doesn't matter. And I think, I've been doing it for so long that the nerves really weren't going at all. It was just such a level. I told Jordan, I told Jake, it was like, man, mentally for me, week one, after 4 weeks of camp, I was just so comfortable in all phases. And especially on that kick, it was just laser focus, and we got two opportunities at it, and to hit, good snap, good hold on both is just always nice. And I think, Jake really trusts us. And, that whole chemistry is just a huge X factor to success with, what all three of us are trying to do each week.
And my other question was, this was especially the case in USFL year one, but you were really heavy in the workout cycle in the NFL.
Yeah.
And there was even some thoughts of like it was because of you being a left-footed punter and teams wanting to get that look. And I was kind of curious, was that like explicit or, like take me through the process of going through? I mean, I don't have the number, but it was a lot of teams were working you out that year.
Yeah, so I had more actually between 2022 and 2023. So the inaugural USFL season ended 22, and then so between that, the first and second season there when I was with the Generals, I had more workouts than this past year, and then, and it was probably 80% of those just being, hey, we play the Commanders on Sunday, and they have Tressway, who's a lefty. Can you come hit us some balls? And it's like I've been doing that for I think 8 years now since I've been out of school or whatever it is, and it's kind of a grind, but you never know what it's going to lead to because, I had another stint back with the Rams P squad in December 22, January 23. And, that I think originally just started as a lefty workout. And then, you look at then my agent texted me and said, well, their punter is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So you never know. I mean, it's just been really nice. Anytime you can get in a building, an NFL facility, no matter, how you do, it's never a bad thing. And then this last year, it was a little bit lighter on the workouts. I think I just had three workouts, and they all went really well. But those were all like basically just servicing returners. And I mean, I think Brad Wing's another lefty in this league who threw that touchdown pass. The Broncos did the same thing with he and I back to back going into, I guess that was like November of 2023. Like he was there the week before, and then it was me, and so. We're kind of used to that, but the lefty thing is there's not that many guys left in the NFL now. When I was coming out of college, it was almost like half the league had a left-footed punter. And now I think there's only 5 of the 32. So, hopefully for guys like Brad and I, that's kind of the ticket back to potentially the next level.
Jake, I think you had a couple questions next.
Yeah, the question. You kind of spoke on it a little bit earlier, Brock, with the craziness of that game winner. But how does it feel to know that you established that paw is law, not caw is law?
Yeah, I love that. There was somebody, I can't remember who it was. Can't remember if it was one of my teammates or one of my family members going. They asked me like, "What is this leading up to the game?" I said, "What is everyone saying? Caw is the law. Like, what is that?" And like, I played in the XFL in 2020, and Battlehawks, we played there, and seeing that environment was just crazy. And so somebody asked me, I didn't even know they still had that, had that kind of like little catchphrase going. But I remember telling somebody that it was the St. Louis thing. And I like to think we kind of put a stamp and squash that, after week 1. So yeah, paw is the law as of now, which I like. It's got a nice ring to it.
I agree. And I love that we were able to continue that undefeated streak of my spring teams not losing to St. Louis, DC, and now Michigan. So love it. And thanks for your part in that.
Of course.
Luke, I think you had a couple questions.
Yeah. Hey, Brock. Thanks for doing this, man. It's always a good day when you can hate on St. Louis a little bit. But speaking of, sorry, I had to say it. I had to. So, but with last week, we kind of hit on this earlier, but man, it feels like specialists are having their moment. Like, we had 2 feature interviews on the Pat McAfee show with spring football this morning, and both were entirely special teams about special teams, right? Which, I mean, obviously Pat's a special teams guy, like we know that, but that's sort of been the talk of the league. So, what's that kind of been like, special teams, kind of like maybe offensive linemen or some other positions, you don't always maybe get the recognition that you really deserve. And so what's it been like after this weekend games, your game, of course, and then other games, to kind of have specialists like just sort of dominate the conversation?
I mean, I love it. We play, it's such a, I always say like, it's a job that kind of everybody wants during the week at practice. Like we see the linemen doing one-on-ones and just killing each other during the week. And we're kind of, we get good work in, but it's like, you can only do it for so long and you can only do so many things for it. And so it's like, we obviously all get heckled all week, and then come game day there's so much pressure, it's almost like nobody wants it. So to get the recognition is awesome, and I'm so happy for Jake with his story and his ability. And he he's such a humble guy off the field. He doesn't want to take credit for anything, but we kind of already, all 3 of us talked it's like, whether it was an amazing game or it was like a disastrous game, like whatever happens on Saturday or Sunday, you can, learn from it, reflect on it, enjoy it. And then it's like, we've already talked. It's like, we're kind of ready to, him especially, like, let's put this behind. It was great, but it's like, we have such a long season ahead, and it's, all three of us prepared really well leading up to week 1. And it's like, we want to go into week 2, especially playing Birmingham, prepare the exact same way we would have, for this first week. And that can be probably, that's kind of hard to do after such a high like that. So we have tomorrow off, and then, after we come back to work on Wednesday, it'll just be business as usual, ideally. Guys in the locker room are still, mobbing Jake every time they see him, but but that's the plan moving forward. But it's been good with all the love.
Yeah, and just kind of a follow-up with that too. You talked about you all play Birmingham next week, and when I think about someone who's followed these leagues, and it's particularly the USFL over the last couple of years, when I think about punters, you and Colby Wadman are two names that immediately come to mind. And the way these leagues have been set up, you all sort of were all together in Birmingham in 2022, and then this year you all are all together in a way, sort of down there in Texas. So I kind of have noticed, I feel like, following these leagues, that not only do the specialists sort of seem to click together in terms of, the specialists on one individual team, but it seems like some of the specialists across these spring leagues, because of the shared hubs and things like that, have been able to kind of connect and bond and form relationships. Is there some truth to that, or are you looking forward to shaking Colby's hand after the game this weekend, or what's that been like?
Of course. Even non-USFL or non-XFL guys, it's just professional, I guess, kickers, punters, and snappers, just specialists as a whole. It's kind of like a tight-knit community. You never truly like compete against each other unless it's like a workout for an NFL team or something like that. So we're all just always rooting for each other. And Colby especially, he's probably the best punter in the league. And, he's somebody that I've, honestly studied tape on, because I think mechanically he's so good. It's a tight-knit group, even down to the college level, really. It's just, what we do is so unlike anything else football related, that it's kind of that special bond between specialists. And then on top of that, when you have some of these guys like me that are going into their 3rd year of spring football, it's like, how could you not grow a relationship with some of these guys that you play twice a year for now, going into the 3rd season. So it's cool. And they have a great unit. So it'll be fun to line up against them on Saturday.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Right on. As we wrap up this segment, Ducky, Ref Zach, you guys got any questions?
Right here for you. Brock, hey, glad to have you on the show, man. Look, I've actually been wanting to ask someone, or a punter in either of these leagues, about this now. Well, especially now with the XFL punting rules being the main foray here in the UFL. How do you adjust with not being able to do coffin kicks and the fact that your gunners get restricted from running down before you punt off?
Yeah, we have a hard job, and it kind of feels new to me again. Because this was the original XFL rules back in 2020, and I remember kind of trying to figure it out back then, and then to have it come full circle 4 years later, it's tough. It's just, there's really what kind of ball do you want to hit? It was hard to because you can punt out of bounds now open field if it's not inside the 20 or 25.
Right.
But that was such a huge part of my game the last 2 years in the USFL. On my pooch punts or sting punts, whatever you want to call them, is able to, you don't have to worry about the bounce if you can just put it on the paint when you're pooching it. And so to not be able to do that is tough. And it just comes down to, I think most teams are just looking for hang time, because Darius Shepard last week, he's a good buddy of mine, and to know I'm kicking to him, it's like, man, what do you do when you gotta, you're gonna get the ball in his hands and your gunners aren't leaving, so they're not gonna be down there. And so it was just, trying to prioritize a little bit more hang time. And I was lucky, we did a nice job this week, I think, at containing him about the best we could with these rules. But it's getting the ball up instead of out, I think, a little bit, for most guys. That's what we're trying to do. But on the flip side, all the punters too want to have good numbers too. So, you don't necessarily want to hit just a 35-yard punt straight up. You want to show that you can flip the field, but it's an uphill battle, and you're kind of just going to war every fourth down, because it's such a the disadvantage being a punter. It's just tough in this league. But if you can do it in this league, I think you can do it at the next level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ref Ducky, any parting words here?
I'm a broken man after this weekend, so I don't have much, but I will say this. It's less of a question and more of just calling out, Ford Field seems to be a great facility to kick in.
Yeah.
Right? So when we look at the kick from over the weekend, 64 yards, second longest kick since 1960.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at the longest kick in the NFL, at least, that's in Ford Field from Justin Tucker, I believe.
Absolutely.
Right? Now we come over to the UFL. Last year we saw record kicks happening in Ford Field. We fast forward this year, Ford Field. So as a specialist, kicking specialist, I mean, it must feel good having that as your home base. At least half of your games are there in Ford Field, and potentially going into the postseason, into the playoffs. If this win that you have already under your belt, that might ensure that. So less of a question, but any thoughts on outside of Ford Field? I know we're only one weekend. You haven't played in any of the other stadiums per se this season. Which ones are you looking forward to?
San Antonio, another dome.
There you go. Yeah.
I know we don't go. We don't play St. Louis again unless it be the postseason. But you guys mentioned specialists. And being a tight knit community. That's all we do. When we talk, is we just talk about punting and kicking inside when no one's around. We just bask in, imagining what that's like, playing indoors. And so the fact that our first 4 games are indoors is just a blessing. And yeah, the ball flies because here in Texas for the season, then obviously flying to games. I mean, it's still been really cold. We're practicing at 9 a.m. every morning. It's windy. It's still like 40 degrees in the mornings. At least it has been. It's starting to warm up now. And so, that affects the ball for sure. And then you get on a level playing field with no variables indoors at Ford Field, and you get 64-yard kicks flying, I guess. So, it's awesome. I'm super stoked to be here with Michigan and the Panthers, and then obviously that venue and our fans is it's perfect. So, already stoked for next week.
Yeah, it's something about Ford Field, man. I mean, I last year I've been extremely lucky because I was at Aguilar's 8-for-8 game with the 55-yard walk-off.
So was I, because I was against us with the Generals.
That's right.
That's right.
So that's still and another great kid. Like, I was so stoked for him. I knew him before. We played against each other, and so that was awesome. But to lose, it's like to lose on that edge of the coin, and where a guy goes 8-for-8, and like they weren't chip shots. He had 3 from over 50 that game. Ford Field is just a magic place. And you guys brought up Tucker too. So he had the 66, you have Jake's kick, but then also Tucker had a 61 a couple years in Ford Field again before that. So like, that's the other thing. People are talking about Tucker and Jake, but like it's like the 3rd time basically that a 60 plus has been made on those uprights. So who knows? Like, maybe it happens again this next week. I have no idea, but I wouldn't put it past them.
And to point out on that 61 yarder, that game was 18-16, which is the same score as the Michigan game this weekend. So just a bunch of connections.
You can't even make that up. It's insane.
Let me start getting the
Like
web
EJ
together.
said in the post game, hopefully, Jake isn't put in that situation to have to kick another 60-plus yarder. But nice to know that he has the ability and focus to do that multiple times if called upon. But hopefully,
absolutely. I think he's hoping at least for the next couple games to build a nice 100% stat line with a couple that are just maybe a little bit closer. So
Yeah, we'll go for 63 yards next time, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was funny. I mean, somebody was talking about how his first kick in the pros is going to be a game winner, and he was right, but none of us expected it to be 60 plus. So just stoked for him, obviously, and we're ready to do it again if we need to this weekend.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Brock, we really appreciate your time joining us today. Thank you for all the insights and the fun chat. And hey, best of luck this weekend.
Yeah, I appreciate all you guys. Keep up the great work, all the content, everything. James, the photos, everything, bro. And, I appreciate all you guys. So talk to y'all soon.
Sounds good, Brock. Take care, man.
All right. Later.
All
That was
right.
fun.
Yeah.
This chat is going nuts over me not talking right now.
I've been seeing the entire time, by the way.
I wanted to
gave
ask
you
about it
an
so
option
badly.
a couple times. Hey, now.
Well, okay. What's funny is in chat we're late, so with Ducky returning, chat really wants to see Ducky. Ducky comes back. Well, what's he not talking? It's like, well, he's back. We satisfied that quota.
I think he's just a little shell shocked by Greg Williams' defense or something.
Yeah.
The people can never get enough.
I've warned him. I've been warning all you Defenders fans, us former.
What the?
Greg Ingham.
I saw it. I put it on the screen.
Wild.
Oh, Max.
Around the
God.
UFL, man.
Oh, what a show.
Man, that was one heck of a game. And yeah, being down there on the sidelines for that, to see that kick twice, like literally I was standing next to another photographer and we were talking about it. And I was like, hey, just a heads up. This guy has not attempted a kick in a game since high school. So we'll see how this goes. And he looked at me and he was like, oh my God, like seriously? Like, and then he made it. And we were like, oh my goodness. Like, I
watched Zach go full circle. We were we were at the Tesla Supercharger watching the end of the game, right?
The ref
on our way back from Arlington. And we're watching it, and you know, the Battlehawks get that score. They're up 49 seconds left, and we're watching it go down, and Zach's like, oh my God. And then when they brought up the stat about hasn't attempted a field goal since high school. Zach's like, why did we do this? Why we had Cole Murphy, this and that and this. And then he kicks it. You know, they iced it, but it went in. It was a whole different attitude in that car all of a sudden. Zach was, it wasn't in because he had to kick it again, but there was a new sense of focus that I don't know if I've ever seen in Zach. And then when we won that game because I am the Panthers fan. This guy, he celebrated so heavy. And I'm sure that all the other people in the Tesla Supercharger are like, what are they doing? Because you're like, yeah! Oh, sorry, but you were in it. And, you know, that was fun. That was great. Sorry. I probably blew everyone's ears out.
We're sorry.
I apologize. But now you get to see. That's what it was like. It was fun. The refla. Isn't that the best way to watch a game?
And that's what we call fandom.
Yeah.
Oh man! Hey, how about that compliment though? The second best show, just under Pat McAfee.
Just behind Pat McAfee.
Sign him up.
Well, now we got to go.
Take it.
Yeah. Now we got to take that number one spot.
It's time.
But hey,
we're number one on Stevie T's list.
Yeah, I was about to say Stevie T. We got number one, so we're doing good.
PFN on top, again. 1 and 2 spots, by the way, baby. That's what I'm saying.
Gold standard, as Stevie T put it. So hey,
hell, we got top 4. I mean, just saying, we got a bunch of stuff. Stallions hitting up there on top 2. We're getting all the shows hitting on top right now. It's great. It's freaking
well, Stevie
great.
T. I mean, he is the largest collector of top podcast lists. I mean, I don't know of a list that's more known than the Stevie T spring football list. Tell me one. Is there another person or group of people that organizes the list of podcasts? And I mean, we're on top.
No, I don't think so. I think we need like an official Stevie T awards at the end of the season.
Ooh, I like that.
Like
Hopefully
the Grammys, but for like UFL.
We need Stevie T at Spring Stock to give them out too, or Summer Stock.
Exactly.
Summer
You guys
Stock.
can pass this to Stevie T. He is very accessible on Twitter, and you will. Yeah, we might get this going. You know, can't be branded with Stevie T without Stevie T approving himself. By the way, so
no, I want him there.
It's got to be there. Got to be there.
Well, hey, before we move on to, I think power rankings is probably up next.
We got one more game,
but do we?
We still have yet to touch the.
We never really
best game of
scratched
the week.
into.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I said, do we have any thoughts? I was about to say, or do we have any thoughts on the Panthers Battlehawks game in general?
I'm gonna back off.
I had to beat you because I'm hosting, so I tried to cut you off so I could get that lead in, but no.
Excuse me. Classic James, excuse me moment. I didn't get it for a second.
All right, before I go on my diatribe on the game, because obviously getting to be right there, lined up at the 50, so I had the perfect vantage point for that Jake kick. So anybody else have any thoughts on that?
You want to go? I don't. We got to head out. And
I know. I'll put real quick, and then actually, this is part of the show. No curtains. I got to fly back to Phoenix tonight, and so this is about my time to leave. Look, all I can tell you is this: if this was last year's Mike Nolan squad, they would have folded like a lawn chair instantly after that score late from the St. Louis Battlehawks,
or been beaten like a what did that guy say? Beaten?
Oh my God!
Like a
beaten like a barn door in a windstorm. That
in
was
a
what,
hurricane.
That was what.
Sorry, I overheard that at the Houston game. Sorry. So
But
anyway,
at late fourth quarter, I thought it was done. He did the persona here did a great job of replicating my thoughts and feelings. But no, look, adjustments were made. Shocking by a Mike Nolan standard. Timeouts not managed well, but hopefully. Not really going to happen, I think, but hopefully gets changed. Long story short, though, defense impressed. Offense has a little bit of retooling, but West Hills, that's a legit contender. If you can run your offense through West Hills, EJ Perry gets a little more time to get a little bit more comfortable and find Jordan Sewell and Cole Hicatini more often than not. So great win. I might be overreacting this week on how I feel about them, but I also put St. Louis as number 2. So you beat the 2, I move you to the 2. That's what I'm doing. That's my story. That's about it for me.
I love your point on West Hills. I know you got to run, so safe travels, Zach. Hope the flight goes well and you get back to Phoenix smoothly.
Thank you.
And I'll tell the ref you guys said hi.
Oh yeah, totally. Thanks, ref. Appreciate it.
Sign him up.
So just to bounce off that, Jake, I'll let you go in a second. Well, you're the host, so you should actually define who goes when. But I just want to expand on his point on West Hills quick. I thought Hills was really the only running back that really impressed except for Anthony McFarland, who I thought had a solid performance for San Antonio. Wes Hills and McFarland were the two guys that I thought really stood out from a running back perspective. You also have Birmingham. I know Luke.
Did you not watch the Stallions game?
Marable and Person did really well, but we knew that they were going to do well. Wes Hills was in a new offense. We had some questions about how they were going to look. And then Anthony McFarland, questions about him, right? What's his NFL prowess going to translate over? But to get back to my original point, running the offense through West Hills could really prove to be a dangerous factor for Michigan. I thought, shout out to the running backs coach, Jordan Pavlison. I mean, he's done a great job with Hills and also bringing in Matt Colburn. They got a nice room.
Yeah, I mean, that, and you have to, think that AJ Perry's legs come into play a little bit too, make defenses freeze. And then when you have both of them, especially, with this big body that Hills is, have him in as a run blocker, in pass pro too, that, like he got stronger as the game went on. That was very evident at the beginning of the game. We really weren't getting anywhere in the run game, but as adjustments were made, game went on. Hills definitely got a lot stronger, and I think he was a big part of being able to move the chains a bit and get us into that scoring position, which we should have had another score if not for that fluky interception. So whatever the Sword with Wings fans might want to say on the fluky 64-yard kick, if that ball head went any other direction on that Perry second interception, which, in my opinion, he did not make a bad decision on that throw. He threw it towards the ground to where really only his receiver could have got it. It just took a really weird fluky bounce, and
it looked like
right
from
place,
my
right
position
time.
In the end zone, looked like it just bounced off his kneecap.
Yeah, right place, right time. Like, because the other St. Louis defender was coming right across the field, and it just popped right in his head. Like that, it wasn't even like the ball hung in the air; it went right to him, right off the guy. So, like, it was a really good game. Like, I think the Panthers defense played really well. I think that was one thing that we really expected to see, was that the defense was going to take a step up. They very much did. Pretty much shut down, the Battlehawks for 3 quarters. Obviously, things got a little bit out of hand in the fourth there with the back and forth. But I mean, the offense obviously is going to be the thing, and as people have said, that's their weakest link, and I still think that's the case. And I didn't expect any different. But seeing that as far as pass protection, that 3 of the top 5 rated guys in the UFL by PFF were Panthers O-linemen, so that gives me some hope. But
which ones?
I don't know. PFN Discord. I didn't ask. We were running out of time. It was right before the show, so I did not. I didn't look to see which.
Poor timing.
Exactly. I've been bad with my time management today, but I can continue to ramble on. Those fans annoyed the absolute hell out of me before we even got into the stadium, so I was glad that we got to shut them up, send them home. Glad that they traveled. Like, I love that aspect of it, so I'll give some credit there, because I've been, harping on them, and I appreciate them for allowing me to steal the is law, but correct it to paw is law. And I'm going to, of course, use that ad nauseum for the rest of the week.
And really, the rest of the season, unless you can. You don't play them again unless you make it to the championship.
I mean, I will definitely be using that mercilessly in any replies to Battlehawks fans, but I'm not going to take that tagline because I've always felt it was cheesy. But for the trolling, that's going to be used ad nauseum.
Luke, any thoughts on what you saw out of this game? I mean, you guys play Michigan next week. How you feeling?
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I mean, when we traveled up there and played them last year, it was a good game. The Stallions obviously were a little too much down the stretch, but I mean, it was a close game for the most part. And obviously, both teams have a lot of continuity from last year, but also both teams have a lot of new faces too. So I think both teams are improved. I think both teams kind of had big sort of statement wins in week one. So, I think it'll be interesting to see, if it turns into a game similar to the Battlehawks game where, it was nothing for a long time. Like I know Michigan obviously has a good defense and the Stallions have a very good offense. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of contain the Stallions offense. And then, on the flip side, I think we'll have to see if Wes Hills terrorized the Stallions defense the first time they played him last year. Now they figured him out when they saw him again, especially in the playoffs. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think I wasn't necessarily expecting this game to maybe feel as significant as it does in week. I mean, obviously it's just week 2, but two of the only remaining 1-0 teams that are kind of out the gate here. So, and trying to establish themselves as the top team in the USFL conference. So definitely looking forward to it.
Remember, just the USFL conference, though, not the UFL as a whole, because 50 times worse than the XFL.
We're both
had to make sure that caveat.
Yeah, I don't want to give people the wrong impression. We're both trying to establish ourselves as the best of the worst.
Yes.
Oh man, it never ends with you guys. I love how Thorne's like the only true XFL fan here, because I mean I'm kind of in the middle.
Nah, Ducky's with me. He's been since day one.
I'm not wearing
that. Yeah, that's my god. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that's a brutal wardrobe choice. But yeah. No, I mean I was never big on the I thought it was a tick, and it was all for me personally last season. It was all like the depth. I felt like the XFL had a little bit more depth. With the consolidation and obviously a lot of offseason additions, I think whatever was there is gone now. And you saw some teams like Michigan's a great example, pick the best of the rest. And now they have a team that looks very different than what they did last year. And kind of that back half of the roster is gone now. So, I don't think at this point going forward, there's really, it's almost like, you can compare it to the NFL versus AFL stuff, where Joe Namath in Super Bowl III beats the Colts, and then suddenly that conversation just becomes not important anymore. That's kind of how I view the USFL going 2-0 now. It's okay. That conversation can be done with now, and we can move on to more important things.
Makes sense. That's a pretty valid point. Moving on to week 2 coming up soon. Which
this dude is mad in the comments. Something about McCarron. He's crying more than McCarron.
Wait, did you say something about mid-Karen?
McCryan.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
McCryan.
McCryan.
Harassed
McCryan. That's right, yeah.
AJ McCarron sucks.
I'm sure he has lots of crying to do after this past week.
Well, hey, how about those power rankings?
But I'll give McCryan his due on that. Obviously, their offense was fantastic last year. But as I've seen people say, it took them, 6 weeks into the season and having to have him throw the ball 40 times a game before they really started to click. I mean, they clearly didn't choose to do that against the Panthers. I think our secondary was not quite up to the level that I anticipated on. So I was a little surprised that they didn't throw it more. But also, let's not get it twisted. McCarron missed so many throws, as did Perry. But there were times that he just hit the dirt and overthrew his receivers, not even anywhere near. So, while everybody might well still want to suck his D on that, I was not overly impressed by his performance.
What did he say?
Hey, Paul's Law, baby.
Paul's Law. I mean, we won the game. You can try to talk him up all you want. His ass took the L. Now
His
he gets
ass?
to go current.
You think he's regretting coming back to the UFL right now? He's like, man, I should have just stayed with the Bengals.
Sure. He's just waiting in line to take over for Beckwich. You know, we'll see how this year goes. Maybe they won't have any other choice but to get rid of Becht.
Could be a coaching
on time.
James,
buddy. Cheese, you got to give out points.
Oh, that's tough.
Well, we've still got the power rankings, but no, I give respect to St. Louis. They're better than what I'm gonna admit to. But considering that everybody wanted to say that they were gonna, beat Panthers by 30, they just take it. Just take it. Like, accept that your team got beat. So,
oh geez,
not just you. You're Rico. Others have been relentless. Like, well, yeah, no one wants to be in St. Louis. Like, I've been there. I don't want to return.
Oh,
I feel like awkward silence is making this segment even funnier.
All right, power rankings.
Power rankings.
Yep. Go for it.
We won the battle for the Midwest, so I'm just gonna talk my crap.
Well, we posted our power rankings, which I don't know, Ducky, if you want to pull up that graphic that Jake so graciously made for us. A lot of movement. I think there definitely is a little bit of recency bias, but let's break it down. I mean, Birmingham's obviously the clear number one right now. The champ beat the champ. And across the board, I thought their operation was probably the cleanest of any team, especially that second half. And you look at some of these teams where, like, Memphis, for example, had a good first half and then had a really poor second half. A lot of the teams I thought just were kind of uneven, where Birmingham consistently got better throughout the game.
Yeah, I think for me, looking kind of league wide and with Birmingham too, I think the parity is really good this year. I kind of don't know what to think in like the middle class. So like Birmingham and San Antonio, I think is a cut above, and Houston's a cut below. But beyond those three, you can kind of rank them however you feel, because each of those teams showed weakness and showed strengths that, depending on what you value and what you think going forward, you could legitimately rank them however you wanted, in my opinion. I wouldn't be too mad about however that was. So, as we, are pulling up the power rankings, I think I had a little bit more of a interesting ranking of those players, and, we can get into that, or teams, we can get into that. But, where I had St. Louis and DC higher, just because I think I feel better about them going forward. But, in general, I'm cool with where we're at there.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how some of these teams respond in week 2, right? Like DC, St. Louis, I look at those two teams as they were 2 and 3 in our rankings coming into the season, and two teams that have a lot of talent, that obviously have been successful franchises. I know St. Louis didn't make the playoffs. I know Jake would probably bring that up, but they still won 7 games last year, and they also had one of the best offenses in the entire XFL. So while both teams, underwhelming performances in week 1, but it feels like with their coaching staffs and with the talent that they have, they're going to bounce back. They're going to bounce back. You would assume, at least.
Yeah, and I think. Well, go ahead, Jake.
I was say honestly, in their grade, I expect St. Louis to bounce back. I would not. I don't have a problem with anybody actually putting St. Louis maybe a spot or so above the Panthers in any power rankings. I do think that they rebound, though. I also think that Perry, if he plays smarter like he did after the first half, that the Panthers offense is going to be competent enough. But other than that, like, I'll keep it focused on St. Louis. I'm scared about them. I'm, like I said, I just said in the chat, kind of like the way I was with the Gamblers last year. I'm glad that we got them early. think people underestimated us from 2022 to 2023, and likewise this year. And I think we took advantage of that. But in a few weeks, I think it'd be an entirely different ballgame. I think Michigan would be improved too. But St. Louis is going to be. I hope they miss the playoffs again, because I'm going to love to meme the hell out of that, as expected. But no, I think they're going to be right in it. But for this week, with the way that it wasn't just a fluky Panthers win, I had to have them behind us.
And so just to break this down here, I don't know if we can get this graphic up or not, but we had all the PFN staff, or most of the PFN staff, vote on power rankings. Birmingham's in at number 1. San Antonio jumps up to number 2. Michigan at 3. Memphis at 4. St. Louis at 5. DC at 6. Arlington at 7. And then Houston at 8. And just to be clear, obviously everybody's kind of voting in a little bit of a different order, but we average everything out, and this is what we came up with. I put San Antonio at 2, and honestly, maybe that's a little bit of recency bias, but I feel like you look at the Brahmas, you can't take too much of last year's season into account because it's a completely different team. It's a completely different coaching staff. The roster is like at least 80% of it is different. And you have, instead of Hines Ward, and instead of, I think it was James Elizondo as his OC, you've got Wade Phillips and you've got AJ Smith, who are two of the most accomplished people in this scene. And Wade Phillips obviously doing it at the NFL level. So yes, I know some of the comments made, Chase Garbers, I thought he had a good game. I know he slowed down the second half. He also didn't have the ball in his hands much in the second half. So I don't know. I feel like the Brahmas, of all the XFL teams, I mean, they looked very complete. And to shut down the defenders to only 12 points, I know Thorne, we talked about Gene DeLance. I mean, he was a huge thorn in that game. No pun intended. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really worried about the defenders because they just don't have much of an identity right now.
Yeah, I think just the way things panned out, kind of one of the cool things is that, this next weekend we'll actually get all the games are 1-0 teams versus 1-0 teams, or 0-1 teams versus 0-1 teams. So I think in some ways this week is going to, obviously you only have 1 week to go off of right now, right? And so we're kind of trying to prognosticate based on a limited sample size, but we're going to kind of continue to separate the, contenders from pretenders this weekend. Like I think the Memphis San Antonio game will be really telling, because I think if one of those teams comes out and wins, kind of handles the other one, pretty easily, that's going to say a lot, right? Or it could be a really close game, which is probably more likely, and so obviously we talked about Birmingham and Michigan. And on the flip side, like some of these other games like Arlington and St. Louis, like that's going to be a really interesting game to see who kind of bounces back. Like is Arlington able to sort of bounce back from the letdown of losing that kind of XFL, USFL champ? And are they able to rise to the occasion with the St. Louis crowd and everything like that playing in St. Louis? And, what does St. Louis do after losing on a walk-off 64-yard field goal when it looked like they were going to come back and win that game? And so those teams have got a lot to prove. And then obviously, same sort of type of situation with DC and Houston. Houston obviously is not getting a lot of love right now, and DC probably didn't expect to find themselves starting off the season 0-1. So I think it kind of worked out such that the slate of games for this week too, there's a lot of interesting storylines.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Houston, ref's not here, so I'm going to say it. I think they're the clear-cut 8 right now. And I will say, I thought Jared Garantano didn't have a bad performance. I think he's actually one of the strongest guys on their team right now. Problem is, the offensive line was a disaster. I mean, they had nothing going the entire game. Whereas Memphis' offensive line wasn't great, but Cookus was able to kind of adjust, and he was able to make some plays, especially in that first half, where Houston, it felt like Garantano was just running for his life almost every single play, used his legs a couple of times, made some things happen. Their defense, pretty solid. I thought the second half especially, I mean, that defensive line is insane. You got to shout out Adam Rodriguez. I mean, he was just blowing things up every play, and they were missing Chris Odom, USFL 2022 Defensive Player of the Year. Rodriguez really stepped up. It felt like almost every play, him, Toby Johnson, Alave Sagapolu, they were all making plays. Ronnie Bingham with the sack. Offensively, though, I mean, they need Mark Thompson back so bad. Because even with Mark Thompson, I still think they're a 7 or 8 in this league. Like, they really have to show something different next week. And Curtis Johnson said it at halftime. He was like, that was an ugly half. Like, it ended up being just an ugly game. Like, they needed some major adjustments.
Yeah, I think with Houston, Houston, their team is built to play from ahead. And the fact that they basically spotted Memphis 9 points at the beginning of the game, that's just not winning football for them. And that's why I kind of view them as that 8 is like they can win. I don't think they're as bad as some of the 8s we've seen in previous years, like the Maulers, the Guardians, those like teams that just didn't have a chance. They can compete, but they have to do it on their terms, and that is getting ahead quick and and playing from ahead, and having Mark Thompson's a big part of that. But honestly, Mark Thompson or not, once they got behind 9 points, it was over. You can see even with the defense playing well, they just don't have an offense built to play from behind at all.
Yeah, I agree there. I thought Zach made some valid points about Memphis, where they're a really good team, but the execution wasn't, especially in that second half, it was a little worrisome where, Houston's missing their best player, and you still let them hang around until the final snap. And if it wasn't for Isaiah Henney muffing that punt, that outcome could have been a lot different.
Yeah, I think I think Thorne kind of hit on this, but I think we can kind of maybe overreact to week 1. I think what's clear is there is going to be a good level of parity in this league. I mean, nobody got blown out, right? I mean, the Stallions definitely handled Arlington very, very decisively in the second half, but I mean, they were losing for the whole first half basically. And it was, if they don't convert that fourth down or, I guess it came right after fourth down, but that touchdown right before half, and they go into coming out in the second half down still, they might have still won, but it might have been closer. And then we talked about San Antonio and Memphis, both won, but actually both very easily, if a couple plays had gone differently, could have maybe in a position where they were in a tie ball game or even losing, like with time expiring towards the end. So I think, and then obviously Michigan, was able to pull it out on the last second field goal. So it's not like, last year this was obviously week 2, not week 1, but last year week 2, the Stallions beat the Showboats 42-2. I don't think we're going to have any of that in week 2 of the UFL. I think there is still a pretty good level of parity, and teams are going to have to bring their A game every week if they're going to want to win. Just certain teams right now look a little more promising, and other teams have some pretty big question marks. Like Houston, we talked about, to only have, I think they had about 174, 175 yards totals, like 40 rushing yards and like 130 passing yards or something like that, against a Memphis defense that, I wouldn't necessarily, when it's all said and done, think is going to be the best defense in the league or something like that. So, some teams have got a lot more to figure out, I think, heading into week 2, and other teams want to sort of build on the success they had in week 1, but nobody is obviously so far out and ahead of everybody else that, we kind of know what's going to happen.
Ducky, what are your thoughts on DC sitting at 6?
I don't know. I saw that. I didn't think they dropped that far, to be honest. I thought they'd drop maybe 1 or 2 spots, but they dropped all the way down to 6. I was kind of disappointed.
I feel like the drop, and Thorne, you might have some thoughts on this. For me, the drop wouldn't have happened that drastically if they still had those key pieces that they had from last year. If they had Abram Smith and they lost, it'd be a different story. The problem is, like I've been saying, where is their identity going to be? What is their identity going to be in? They didn't run the ball. Tamu, he did decent, but again, it's like his receivers are dropping passes. They just look messy across the board. There's miscommunications. I do think their defense has a lot of potential, especially that second half. They got some ballers on that team. Malik Fisher had a really good game on the defensive line, but I don't know. They feel like last year they were the clear number 1 team. This year, It feels like they're middle of the pack.
Yeah. Their defense, they have good players. I think the coaching is the issue, and then them not having the running back like they did last year. That's huge. That's horrible for them.
I'm not having De'Aaron King being able to play along with Teamu because King has a different game, and he came in, made some throws, made some plays with his legs that, really helped spark that was in tandem with Teamu and Smith, that they don't have that this year.
I think personally people have rose-colored glasses towards the DC Defenders last year early in the season. It wasn't until like week 3 that the DC Defenders became the DC Defenders. And that was with the breakout of Chris Blair and Lucky Jackson, who were not really much of anything for the first 2 weeks. I am not panicking on this team. You saw a lot of flashes. Guys like Ty Scott, I think, is going to get more and more involved. He looks like something that, might be akin to a Lucky Jackson. I'm not putting him on that pedestal yet, but as far as a guy who no one really saw coming out of nowhere. And in general, I'm just not. I think it was just them shooting themselves in the foot more than anything. I'm not hitting the panic button yet. Teamu played fine. Obviously he had one bad throw that was costly, but I'm not there yet to hit the panic button. They have looked ugly before, and I think they're a team that's going to adjust. And I don't think Abram Smith also wins them the game either, honestly. I think they got behind, and they were in a, they were in a script where they weren't running it much at all for most of the game. Teamu had 45 pass attempts. So, maybe Abram Smith had, he was decent in the passing game. Maybe he affects that a little bit. But in general, I don't think Abram Smith wins them that game. He probably will, in the future. We'll see the fact that you're losing one of your top running backs in the league. That'll, play an effect later. But for right now, I'm not panicked yet. Obviously, if they play poorly against Houston, that'll be a different story. But for right now, I'm not going to overreact to just one game sample size.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And I think the point I'm trying to make here too is we all were wearing those rose-colored glasses, right? Just because they were 9-1 last year, and because they did lead the XFL with the best record. Obviously, they fell short in the championship, but still across the board, they had a pretty successful season. Where now they're missing those pieces, and now they got to figure things out. They got to really build from the ground up again. So we'll see. I have faith in Reggie Barlow to do it. I just don't think they're a top 3 team anymore right now, as it stands.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but we have a very, very small sample size, which is also why I kind of was trying to not pump the brakes a little bit on San Antonio. Granted, I had Memphis at number 2 still, which is probably a bit of a reach. And I think part of my logic was I already moved up San Antonio 4 spots from last week, so I didn't want to move up 5. 5 just seemed like a little too much, though. No real logic there. Like I said, that'll sort itself out this upcoming weekend. But I mean, I said every game, just one game. Each team has played 60 minutes. There's plenty of time for both ascension and descension. For all 8 teams. Quite honestly.
Got to shout out XFL Jim there. Yes, spring football is life. Amen. Love that. Yeah, I guess as we kind of wrap up this segment, thoughts for me on Arlington. I kind of touched on this earlier. Luis Perez, obviously, he's a very good quarterback, accomplished in this scene, has done a lot of fantastic things, but you can't win with just him alone. You need to have a good supporting cast around him. I think the wide receiver group is really solid. Picking up Deontay Burnett, he had a few really clutch plays for them. Isaiah Winston is a guy that should have a solid year as well. But that running back room, as I touched on earlier, if you got Davion Smith at RB1, and if you got Letty Brown at RB2, I just don't see them providing Perez with enough firepower to really get that offense going, right? Where we're now from 16 teams down to 8. Yes, if it was 16 teams, I'd have a little bit more confidence. But 2022, right? A lot of their success when he was in the USFL with the New Jersey Generals, that run game. I mean, you had Darius Victor, you had Trey Williams, you had these guys that were just knocking off run after run after run, which allowed Perez to really open up that passing game. That's why they had so much success in New Jersey. And then in that playoff loss to Philadelphia, what went wrong? The Stars shut down the run game. Victor really couldn't get going throughout the game. Trey Williams didn't have much of an impact either. And we saw Perez lose that playoff game to Philadelphia. And I'm worried we're going to see a similar kind of situation here in Arlington where his running backs are going to average 2-3 yards a carry and their offense is just going to be flat.
Yeah, I think just real quick, I'll just talk about that and then we can maybe talk about that question. But I think Arlington, I don't know, and maybe Thorne, you could maybe speak to this better than I could because you follow this a little bit more closely. But I mean, in terms of looking at the teams that sort of like retooled and revamped, I just was never blown away with what Arlington did this offseason. Not to say that they didn't get better, not to say that they didn't add some good pieces, but when you look at their roster, like to me, it feels like pretty similar to last year, which
similar.
obviously they won the championship. So it's not like they had a bad roster, but the merger happened and every team got a lot better. Every team added players. I mean, even the Stallions, like you look at the Stallions roster and there's actually, I mean, there is definitely some continuity, but the majority of starters and guys, like for example, especially on defense, are guys that are in their first year with the Stallions. Like they really tried to get better at every position, even though they arguably had the best team in spring football last year. So, and I just didn't get that same impression from Arlington that they were as aggressive in the offseason, kind of bringing in fresh talent. And I felt like that kind of showed this weekend. They just weren't able to keep up with the Stallions. Just had too much firepower down the stretch.
See, and the thing with the Renegades and Thorne, I'm sorry, I'll let you get to your point in a second.
That's fine.
The thing with the Renegades that I thought was really interesting was they revamped a couple of the position groups that I thought were pretty solid, and then they didn't revamp a couple of the position groups that needed work, right? Like the running backs, for example. They just kept the same guys. But then the secondary, who I thought had some really good moments last year and kept them in a lot of games, they got rid of Devontae Bosby, they got rid of Joe Powell, they got rid of Will Hill, brought in a bunch of young faces that they didn't do bad against Birmingham by any means, but really, especially in that second half, like they were getting beat on almost every route. They were letting CJ and Ricky run all over them, which a part of that's on the defense as a whole, but I don't know. I thought some of those personnel decisions were really questionable when you have so much talent available for the taking. You drop a couple of guys that were really important to your team last year, and then you keep a couple of guys that didn't really have a huge impact on your championship.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to get at was their secondary and their offensive line are revamped. But they kind of, for outside of that, outside of a few additions, kind of left the rest alone. The offensive line, I thought, played well enough. They weren't spectacular, but we saw worse this weekend. They have a lot of high-profile pieces on their O-line. Drew Sama, Bobby Evans. These guys were draft picks, some of them day 2 draft picks in the past, all from Oklahoma too, with the Bob Stoops connection. And the secondary is very young. That's a spot that I think is going to get better with time. But really, big picture with Arlington, why I have them at 7 this week is they lack upside. And that's why I kind of was thinking maybe Arlington could win this week is because they have continuity going from last year to this year. Continuity didn't really seem like much of a predictor for who was going to win and lose this weekend. But, if they were going to win games, it was going to be early because they basically are bringing back the same core players. And they weren't able to get close to beating Birmingham this week, which is a team that has basically no continuity at all from like almost none of their starters are back. I think they have like 8 new starters on offense. And so now I'm like, okay, well, where's the upside with Arlington? I don't think they're going to be awful. I think they're going to win games. But I just, when it comes, there's another level to being good in the UFL, and I don't think they have that next gear.
Right. And you look at last season, their biggest advantage was the fact that they were in probably the worst. Well, I mean, the USFL North was pretty bad too, but I think they were in the worst spring football division that we might have ever seen. You had Orlando in there. You had the 2023 Brahmas, who just were a train wreck across the board. And it allowed Arlington to make the playoffs at a 4-6 record. I mean, and granted, I'm not trying to say that their championship wasn't earned. It was earned, and they had a phenomenal run down the stretch of the season, but it is tough to ignore that team in the regular season went 4-6, and you're bringing back a lot of the same pieces from a 4-6 team in an 8-team league. So I don't know, just some questionable decisions on that end. But
just real quick before we wrap up here, I know Christian had a question of who is more likely to lose, St. Louis or DC, and I mean it's got to be St. Louis. Like
Yeah,
and that's that, but that says less about DC or St. Louis than it does about Houston and Arlington, in my opinion.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's my opinion.
Well, they're both at home, so I mean they both have home field advantage. Just given what we saw out of Houston, right? I mean, Arlington at least showed some flashes of life, and I do think that Birmingham's defense is a little bit better than St. Louis's. So I think Arlington has a better shot at beating St. Louis. Houston, man, we got to see something different. I hope Mark Thompson's back because they're going to be in for a long season. I will say I feel bad for some of those fans that, like Ref said,
It's tough.
a little bit of a fleece. I mean, like, I don't know.
I'll put it this way: if somehow through the merger, Skip Holtz went to a different team, and like half our roster, I would be pissed. I'll just leave it at that. So I can empathize.
And I mean, again, it's something that was kind of out of the league's control because they had made the decision. And then Hines Ward just decided to dip last second, which led to them because Wade Phillips was the first guy that was going to come back because he wanted to be in the league. So really just, kind of more of a typical spring football, like, oh man, like too bad we didn't know about this ahead of time. That's how it goes, spring football.
Yep.
But man, I mean, that's gotta really suck for those fans who saw Wade Phillips and AJ Smith and Chase Garbers put on the show in San Antonio, and then their team didn't score a touchdown until they got a turnover that put them like inside the 15-yard line. Yeah. Tough times.
Yeah, that's tough.
But hey, they got things. There's always things to look forward to. You might get Mark Thompson back next week, so we'll see how that goes. I mean, he at least was practicing up until week 1. I know he didn't play, but Coach Johnson was pretty positive on his progress, so I think there's a good chance that we see him against DC. And if we do, he'd probably be the best running back on either one of those rosters.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. Jake, take it away.
All right, we're doing points. I'm just going to shoot from hip on this one. We'll start with Luke. You get 5.0 points. I'm not going 50. Well, I'm not going 50, but but that's why the 0.0 is important here for the 50 times better that the XFL is better than the USFL.
Thank you.
I was wondering where you're going with that. I was like, why not just say 5?
Yeah, like I said, the 0.0 is very integral. I wasn't going to give him 50 for the bit. No, that was too much. Can't have him that far out there. Thorn, I'll give you 4 for DC. You ranking them at number 4. Holding strong there. I saw that game, or what little of the game I could stomach on yesterday. For my sake, I'm still, DC fan at heart. So hopefully we see, some improvement there. James, how many games? You're going to try to hit all 8 markets this year, so 8 points for you on that one.
All right, I'll take it.
Ducky, that one, I don't know.
Yeah,
how many weeks have you been gone?
Oh shit, I don't even know. Oh,
whoa,
sorry. I don't even know. 3, 4.
We'll go with 4 points for 4 weeks for you missing. Glad to have you back.
Good to be back.
And then can I give myself point? Like, can we do decimals? Because I want to give myself then 6.4 if that's going to work. For the
you're the host. You make the rules.
Yeah, that works.
There we go. 6.4 then.
For what exactly?
Awesome.
64.
Again, 64. 64 yarder.
Oh, right. Duh.
Wow.
Not
James
Carson?
fellas.
No, damn.
Oh, we all got 100 points.
Super.
Hey, Jim, you are the
I'll
man.
take it.
Yeah.
XFL Jim, if you guys aren't checking out his YouTube videos, you're really missing out. He's got some of the best spring football content that you'll ever see. I mean that.
Yeah. Go follow him on Twitter too.
It's definitely
worth diving into the Gymiverse.
If you're not there, like, honestly, what are you doing?
I agree. And honestly, if you're not at pfnewsroom.com, I don't know what you're doing either. We got a lot of content creators doing stuff, podcasts, shows, articles. I know Ref and Zach aren't here, so I'll kind of take this spiel for them. Make sure you're getting subscribed to the channel. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Around the UFL and all of our socials across the board. Get locked in. This is UFL season, man. We're finally underway.
You're forgetting the most important part. Hit the bell.
It builds morale.
Alrighty.
Should I do another ref impression? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Wave goodbye. We're ending it.
12-0. Rough them up.